Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Hey, Enchilada Nation, welcome back, and super excited to have my partner in crime back with me today, Jake Breen. Jake, thanks for being here again.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our conversation today, and it's been super fun to hear all the feedback from both our networks and some of the conversations we're having. It makes me happy that we're striking a chord with a lot of people and hearing that we're bringing content to the table that people are excited about. So thanks again for your energy and leaning into this relationship.
Sure thing.
So this last week, you had the opportunity to be involved in a pretty cool event that I've been dying. Like Jake and I just had a pre-conversation, and it took all my willpower not to dive in to ask the questions beforehand, because I've been dying. I was watching all the pictures through the event, jealous that I wasn't there. So I'm really excited to hear about it. So tell us a little bit about what you did this last weekend.
Yeah, you got it. So high level flyover at the start here, so everyone understands the context. I did the Everest challenge. Now, this is a company that's been around for about 3 years. They only do 6 or 7 boutique events a year. And what they do, the challenge is, can you climb the equivalent of the highest peak in the world, which is Mount Everest, which sits at 29,029 feet. So can you go from zero and ascend 29,029 feet in 36 hours? So they find ski resorts around the United States and map out courses, because every course is different. So the course we did was at Snow Basin, Utah, and we started right at the big main bottom gondola, for those of you that know Snow Basin. And I assumed we would kind of meander up single track trails and a Jeep road, but you pretty much go straight up the pole line of the gondola up the mountain. And that course each leg is about 2.3 miles and about 23,000 feet. For those of you that kind of know hiking altitude and the steepness of a trail, 1,000 feet per mile is steep. There's parts that are more than that. They're very, very steep. You're using poles.
Yeah.
And you've got to do that 13 times. You ride the gondola down. Each down ride takes 12 minutes and 12 seconds. And you've got to go circulate that 13 times. So you end up doing about 30 miles and 29,000 feet of elevation.
I'm glad you talked about the elevation in the short distance, because you hear about 2.3 mile rounds. A lot of people would be like, 2.3 miles, why are we even talking about this? But
easy.
Straight up over and over and over again in a period of 36 hours. I'm really interested to dive into the mental game. Obviously, you got to be in good physical shape to do this. We know you're in great physical shape, but the mental game, at what point did the mental game actually kick in for you?
So I've done a decent amount of races. Now, Marcus and I have a similar theme in life for our listeners, and I think that's the theme of Whole Enchilada. And it's, how can you optimize all things in your life? Fitness, health, nutrition, career, family, and juggle all these balls. So I want to tell our listeners that I've rubbed shoulders with some great athletes. And at this event, there was some world-class ranked triathletes, marathon runners that want to do the challenge. And although I highly respect that, I'm married. I got 4 kids. I'm in my 40s. I don't have time. My career and other businesses, I don't have time to dedicate to really be number one at one of those things. So my goal is to be decent and enjoy, but be a jack of all trades. And I'll be brutally honest with you. My good friend and lender, Josh Metal, roped me into this event because he knows some of the founders. We'll dive into that story in a second. But I went into it pretty negative for a couple of reasons. Number one, the race entrance fee was about 20 times the price of what I'm used to paying. And number two, I'm kind of built for speed And although I have run a marathon and stuff like that, that's about my threshold of physical capabilities, maybe a 3 to 4 hour race. And this was 36. We did complete the challenge in 29 with some sleep, but this was kind of more mental than physical. But for a lot of reasons, and we'll dive into this, for a lot of reasons, I can explain to you how my negative attitude going in shifted really quickly. And this truly is probably the number one event / seminar / life-changing thing I've ever paid to participate in.
That's awesome. And you've participated in a lot of events, as have I, different types of things. And it's interesting to me. I get people all the time asking me like, there's got to be some element of crazy inside your head to want to do these type of events. And something keeps drawing me back to them for that reason. Is like, as soon as I figure out how to get past what my brain tells me is my normal capacity, as soon as I step beyond that, it's not just that one step that opens up for me. It's like a whole new world opens up beyond that, what my brain had previously told me was my capacity.
Right.
So for you, as you started that event, how long did it take before you started feeling like, okay, the normal Jake capacity is hitting the end of its ropes?
Yep. That's a good question. Yeah, good question. So I will tell you, remember, 3-year-old company, 6 or 7 events a year. They max out at 250 participants, and they have a company-wide average since inception of 66.7% finish ratio. So you have elite athletes and still a third don't complete this challenge when they sign up for it. And that was similar in our race. And we had all the great things going for us, good weather and things like that. We started Friday morning at 6 a.m. a week ago from today, and we busted out 4 rounds of the 13, and we're keeping about an hour-and-a-half pace on each leg, including gondola time. So we were feeling pretty good about ourselves. And in 6 hours, gone up 4 times. Finishing that 4th lap and thinking to myself, I'm not even quite yet a third done. I had a bit of a mental breakdown. I mean, I wasn't freaking out, and I was pretty confident I could finish. But I started thinking to myself, man, what if I lightly twist an ankle or pull a hand? Like, I'm really fatigued. And 9 more laps is looking really, really far away. And I knew that we were ahead of the clock, right? Because we had 36 hours to complete it. We already got 4 done in 6. Yeah. At the same time, I went, I don't know, that there's no way we can keep this pace. And we're going to have to fuel and rest and, recover. Luckily, we brought up some great recovery equipment, Theraguns and stuff like that. But it was pretty crucial.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, I know I've shared this with you before, and I've shared it with our listeners, but part of my personal mission vision statement says the most difficult tasks yield the most valuable lessons. So anytime I do one of these long crucible endurance events, I always find it's interesting that, like, and I'm thinking about those first 4 rounds for you with a couple of your buddies, your mind's distracted, right? Your mind's not thinking like, oh, my legs hurt, or could I roll my ankle? Like, none of that's happening because you have all these distractions. You're having conversations, you're talking about things, you're noticing, you're smelling the mountain, things like that. But then after your brain's already experienced all that, and you kind of run out of things to talk about, there's like this moment where my brain starts to go instantly internal, like, okay, all the distractions are gone. And my brain's telling me like, what the heck are you doing? Like,
oh, yeah, you nailed it. Now, so I didn't understand. And remember, I mentioned the entrance fees about 20 times what I'm used to paying. And for that reason, right out the gate, I was negative about this race. But and I showed up late. That's another story. I had to fly in from Seattle. My stuff was already in my car at the airport, and I didn't get much sleep the night before. And I was 3 hours late to the registration. And when I showed up to Snow Basin and I went to the camping area, I thought I'd see all these people. I didn't see a soul. I put my stuff in the tent. I went, where is everybody? And they were at the initial registration area slash opening speaker part. Now, I'll be honest, Marcus, a lot of this type of stuff I try to avoid. Like, I do some public speaking around the country, yet when I hear others do it, I'm not dogging on anybody, but generalizing, I usually find it pretty hokey.
Yeah.
Right? Seminars and stuff.
Yep.
So I went in with that attitude, and I got to make this story short so we can jump to some other stuff. But I went in and my attitude changed in about 45 minutes. And here's the reasons why. The speakers were phenomenal, and all the motivational speakers were the owners and founders of this race. The main founder and funder is a guy named Jesse Itzler. Jesse Itzler rapped with Vanilla Ice, made his initial money in his 20s, founded NetJets, sold that, made a bunch more money, and now he's 53 years old, does major adventure races, ultra marathons, super fit, billionaire plus net worth, and he was on stage speaking, emceeing at 6 a.m, there at midnight cheering people on. And then his other partners, the CEO of the company, and one of these other founders who's done some amazing things as well, Colin, he's holds the world record right now for summiting all 7 highest peaks on all 7 continents, including travel time. I can't remember. I think he did all that in 166 days. And just last March, he set the world record for crossing Antarctica unassisted with a sled. And he went over 1,000 miles in 66 days. And the sled was 375 pounds. So there's some context for you. These guys are up speaking. I walk in, everyone's captivated. I'm telling you, not one soul was out walking around or in the camping area or getting food. They're all listening. And at the end of Colin's speech, he was the last speaker. He's the guy that did the Antarctica and summited the other peaks. I told his story of how at 22, he's in Thailand. He decided to jump in on a fire burning rope party where people were jump roping, and it wrapped his legs, and he had 3rd-degree burns all over his body. He spent 2 months in a Thailand hospital and was told he would never walk correctly again. And then over the last 15 years, he's gone on to do all these things. So that alone was inspirational. But he finishes his speech, and I should have grabbed my red hat this morning, but he holds up this hat. And it's just a red hat that says 29029. And he says, these hats are for finishers. And my partners are more wealthy than I am. He's like, I could really use money, but I'm telling you, you couldn't buy this hat off me for $1 million. And there are people in our company, like our CEO, that don't have one of these hats. And he's like, and this is what you get to put on when you finish that 13th leg. And analogous to business, their attention to detail in this race is phenomenal, because his speech was great. He holds up the hat. And then at the top where you finish, they have a nice board with all these hats hung and lights. So you can, LED lights that like color change. You can see them through the night. And I could give a rat's about a hat, but by the time you're finishing 13 legs, you're jonesing for that hat.
Yeah.
and that's part of their culture. Here is me completing leg 1. So in the spirit of attention to detail, and I would say that's one of my major 3 takeaways for this race, making this analogous to people's businesses. I've never been to an event that had better attention to detail, from the camping area to the swag, to the little things they leave on your pillow, to this. This is called the Ascent Board, and they custom make these for every single race, and they brand your name in it, and they do 13 boxes, and you brand iron their logo after you come down on each leg. Now that's a silly detail, and I read a little about this, and they didn't do this the first year or 2. They did the event, but they kept toying with, how could we make this a little more memorable? How could we cause a deeper sense of camaraderie? And back to you saying, hey, where did you physically, get challenged or break down or start questioning? They told us right at the beginning, I didn't understand this going in. They told us right at the beginning when these few speeches, and they said it multiple times, this is not a race, this is a challenge. Now, I don't understand the difference, Marcus, but everything I've ever signed up for that has a physical component, I'm type A. I'm built for race.
Yeah.
Like the clock goes off and I'm like, how fast can I go? Or here,
Yeah.
somebody looks like they're about my age and they're ahead of me. I got to pass them. Like, I will be honest, although it sounds arrogant, that's my nature.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I have a saying, it's no friends on race day. And my friends joke with me about it. I've done some events where they're like, it's about to start and we're all talking about staying together. And my wife's like, yeah, right. And then friends are like, over under, how many seconds does it take for Jake to ditch us?
Yeah.
And so I was hearing that the night before in these speeches. This is a challenge, not a race. And I went, that doesn't even make sense to me. But back to attention to detail in your business, the way they did all these little things during the event, like this leaderboard, there's a clock ticking down because you only have 36 hours to finish, but they're not timing you and they don't award first, second, third place. All these things I didn't understand going into it. And the camaraderie that built, even for people who didn't finish the challenge, was the most amazing thing I've seen in my life as far as events go. This is at the top in the last 15 minutes. And everybody during the race is wearing a white jersey. And that white jersey says your name and a number on front. And it has the 7 highest peaks in the world on the back leading up to Everest. And so as you get through, I think it was 6 legs, you've climbed a peak in Europe. As you get through 8, you've climbed Denali. As you get through 11, you've climbed Aconcagua, and so on. And so you can kind of see where people are at, and you can check that leaderboard where people are branding at the bottom. And we finished about lunchtime on Saturday, and at 6 p.m. that day, it was the absolute cutoff. And staff started going around to those of us that were showering. We had red hats, and we were kind of celebrating, and the bar was open and all this stuff. And they said, hey, you really ought to go up top for the last couple hours and cheer people on. And I'll tell this one story in detail. Me and my other 2 buddies that did it with me were sitting there eating a 5-star lunch and outside and watching people come down. And the night before, we had dinner with this mother-daughter from Denver. We could tell the mom was legit. Like, she'd done ultra marathons. We're like, she's going to finish for sure. But we could tell her daughter, who was 21 years old, was kind of along for the ride. And we could tell mom was doing it for some mental inspiration for daughter, not really to have a physical challenge. Probably sounds judgmental of us, but we were kind of like, we don't know if daughter can finish. So we're sitting at the bottom, and there's about 5 hours left for the cutoff time. And this mother-daughter was probably averaging a 2.5 hour per round pace. And they had gone all through the night. And they get off the gondola, and we see staff just sponging the daughter with ice sponges and spraying her with sunscreen. And she's definitely overheated. And they have an EMT come over, and she's branding her 11th lap. So she's got 12 and 13 left to finish. They're branding her 11th lap and having an EMT check her out. She's crying. And my buddy Josh Metal looks at me and he's like, bro, there's no way she finishes. And I'm like, agreed. There's absolutely no way she's going to get 2 more laps. The question is, in this sense of camaraderie, and remember, it's a challenge, not a race, could she give it all she has? Was that all she had in the tank? Or could she go 1 more, knowing that she'd be a leg short and not get the red hat? So this drama is unfolding before our eyes. And we had had dinner with them the night before, so we kind of knew them. And Josh turns to me, my buddy, and goes, dude, I don't know that I'd head back out, man. I mean, she's been going for like 32 hours straight. She's not going to finish the challenge. Why try? And she's spent. And I said this to him. I said, bro, if she goes back out, this last 3 hours is going to be a life-changing moment for the daughter. Let's see what happens. Well, about 10 minutes later, they took back off on another lap. So we rolled the gondola up, and there was 200, they capped the race at 250. So around 250 people that did it. And there's probably 40 red hats up there. We were 3 of them. and red hats are cheering on people finishing. The last half hour or so, we see mother-daughter round in the corner. And again, white jerseys, and they'd still have another leg to finish. But they're approaching, and Jesse Itzler, founder of the company, billionaires, emceeing, and he says, looky, looky, here come two more. Can they finish it? And daughter was barely walking, severely overheated again. But the entire crowd just starts cheering, and that's that video I just showed. And she goes from like a pole, stumble, sore walk to kind of like, if you remember Forrest Gump, where he's breaking the things off his legs and starting to actually run when the kids are throwing rocks at him. The music kicks in. I mean, that's one of my top 5 movie clips of all time. I get chills. I just got chills talking about it. And I see this daughter do that. And she lifts up her poles and she jogs like the last 100 yards up the mountain. And we all create a tunnel and we're giving high fives and patting her on the back. Bro, I'm telling you, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. And they didn't finish the event, but she gave it her all. And I gotta believe for those type of people, that's life-changing.
That story gave me chills. It's interesting that you think you want to hear about the guy that won, the guy who was first, but that to me that gave me chills to hear that story. And I think it can be related back to business and to life of how many times at the beginning of the year do we set these big goals for ourselves and we find ourselves off pace, and you see the people that totally become demoralized and retract, right? And just the rest of their month or the rest of their year just becomes mediocre at best because they've already resolved, like, I'm not going to hit the goal, so why try?
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to the person's like, you know what? Yeah, it's physically impossible for me to hit the goal, but I'm going to give it my darndest. I'm going to do my best. And I think that life lesson is significant. And I think I'm guessing if you and I sat here and turned this into a psychology lesson more than just a conversation, is we probably could go back to specific times in our lives. I know there's ones in mind that I came to a crossroad at different times in my life where I had to decide, am I okay being mediocre, or do I want to continue to try to self-improve and get to the next level? Mm-hmm. And I have some very key moments in my world, or times in my life, where that was the crossroads. And I'm guessing for this woman, that was a fork in her road that she'll remember for all time.
Absolutely. And, you know, bringing this back and relating it to life and business, you know, I actually wrote my review to the Everest challenge yesterday.
Yeah.
And I said something similar to what I've been telling our listeners. I went in with a very negative attitude, and that turned around quick. And it's the best event I've ever attended. And $5,000 registration fee seems like a bargain to me now. And I'm not an easy turn. I'd go back to this business analogy of attention to detail. The race was finishing, and they had a wrap-up speaker, which was these same owners. Somebody staff-wise went to everybody's tent locations and put this card and one of the branding blocks that you'd been branding on all your legs, of bamboo, on your bed. So I've got the block sitting here with me at my office. And this plays into what you just said, Marcus. So I apologize, listeners, for reading this, but it's something you got to hear. It says, congratulations on your efforts on the mountain this weekend. You are now part of an exclusive group that understands the power of this event in this community. You committed to something that you weren't sure you could do, and you are leaving here a different person than one who arrived on Thursday. As you return home, do not forget who you were when every fiber of your being wanted to quit. You found a way to keep climbing, and you can continue to do so as each of life's obstacles are put in front of you. We know that you gave all that you had, both physically and mentally, on the mountain. Thank you for sharing the best part of yourself with us. Climbing 29,029 feet is truly a metaphor for life. So whether you got there or not, the fact that you dared to try should give you the courage you need to face the challenges that come your way. When things get tough, you can think back on the smell of each branded logo, the high fives from your peers, and the resolve that you developed on this journey. 29029 is now your story to tell. We can't wait to witness what you do next.
Awesome.
I'll tell you what, man, And perhaps my attitude going in hindsight was a blessing, because in life, when you can have some humility and admit you're dead wrong, and when those transitions, the way you think is flipped 180 quickly, if you're humble enough to recognize where you were wrong and you accept that, those moments can be life-changing. So the physicality part of this wasn't life-changing for me. I think it was for others. For those listeners that are wondering if they could ever do this and all the shape they'd have to get into, I'll tell you, it has more to do with mental fortitude than it does physical. You're gonna need to train a little, but I would say physically a marathon, if I wanted to compete and go fast, is harder. But this is gonna take more effort, but then you're gonna dig deeper in all aspects of yourself to complete the challenge. And even if you don't, look at the language they have in their little wrap-up card. It's not about finishing, it's can you give your all for 36 hours? And the way they were able to disseminate that message that I was not expecting, I thought it was a race. The way they disseminated that really made it the most well done business event I've ever attended, even though it was a challenge. Yeah. Because when you do hard things in life together and you have deep perspective changes, those are the life-altering moments.
Yeah, and I think you approach, every time I've completed one of these events, a crucible type event or something that challenged me, is all of a sudden my perception of what's possible changes. The day before, what I thought was possible or my limits all of a sudden became a benchmark to the next level. It was interesting. About a week ago, I texted you just to check in. I knew it was coming up, and I said, "Hey, how you feeling about the event?" And I was expecting a text back of like, "Man, I'm so excited. This is going to be awesome." And there was some element of that to the response, but the thing that caught me off guard was I'm nervous, right? And this is like, you and I have been trail running a couple times, and you're always so kind to match my pace when we go trail running. But man, you're in such good shape for this type of stuff. So it was interesting for me to hear I'm nervous and I'm still gonna go do it, right? I'm still gonna go tackle it with every resolve, and I'm gonna give it my all. Yep. And based on what you just said over the last couple of minutes, I think this is a perfect time that I want to issue a challenge to all of our listeners. Now, you might be looking at this Everest event and being like, there's no way I'll ever be able to do that type of event. And I would challenge that, but more importantly, it starts with accomplishing something. So what I would like to issue as a challenge, in particular, as we're coming into the end of the year, and stay tuned with what Jake and I have coming up over the next several months, because we're going to help create some framework around helping you do this. But if you don't have something out in front of you that you're working for that's making you a little bit uncomfortable, or that you're a little bit nervous for, or that you're a little bit scared about, you are not capitalizing on this life. You have found a coast mode. You have found a comfort level, and that might be okay. You might be comfortable, but I guarantee you, if you don't have something that's pushing you and making you a little scared, you are not even on a path to hit your potential. Would you agree with that, Jake?
Oh, I'd agree wholeheartedly, and you nailed it. And they breathed that theme into this event a lot. I say it, and really I have to give credit to my wife, because she said this probably 10 years ago and we've stuck to it. She just says, always have something on the books. If you have something on the books, now we're talking physical right now, but if you have a race or a challenge or something, as long as something's on the books, you're going to push it a little harder every day at the gym. You're going to run a little further. You're going to, have something that you want to perform for. So I would say keep it simple. Just have something on the books. And then number two, let's address nervousness. I'm going to butcher how one of the speakers said it. But I never would have understood this in my life until the last couple of years. And over the last couple of years, I've done a decent amount of internal work, tried to learn to meditate, tried to learn to calm my thoughts and go more off of feeling and emotion when it's a big decision. Because if you're type A like me, it's 99% logical thought mental, right?
Yeah.
And so you start disregarding those other parts of what should be your decision-making process.
Yeah.
And so as I've learned to do that, what they said a few times at this race about the butterflies or the jitters or the race day worries made a lot of sense to me. And it's this: there is a massive difference between nervous / excitement that can be propelled to action. And we as humans, since caveman days, have been programmed by fight or flight. And so the I'm nervous butterfly feeling when you're about to do something big physical is actually good. That gets endorphins going, it raises your adrenaline and allows you to act. Not to confuse that with the I got a gut feeling and I'm kind of sick about such and such decision. And to me, those feelings were the same. I think to a lot of people, they're the same until you really get in tune with yourself and you can identify the difference. And so if you always got something on the books, and when you think about it, it's giving you that anxious, upset, nauseous feeling, perhaps you're thinking about it wrong. If you got something on the books and you can kind of just slowly prepare for it and know that it's coming, and then day of or the night before, you might not be able to sleep and you got the nervous blues or the nervous tension, but you're going to propel that into action the next day. Stop thinking of that as a negative thing. That's good for you.
Yeah, no, I love that you bring that up, because I think that your ability to tell when it is a good nervousness versus a gut feeling or a warning, right? Like walking down a dark alley and you have this nervous, weird feeling, you probably ought to listen to that, versus this, it's a very similar feeling that's like, oh, this is going to be hard and this is going to be challenging. And your brain wants to tell you you can't do it to protect you, when in essence, you really can do it and should do it.
Yep.
Right. And you know, we've been talking a lot about a physical event today, and as our listeners are well aware, this is not about just achieving in one area of life. It's about achieving in multiple areas of life. So you can just as easily select something that's a goal that's going to push you in a relationship sense or spiritual sense or a business sense. Like if you're consistently making 50 calls to your database every month, double it 1 month, and just, even though you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I need something to make me a little bit uneasy and scared to push my capacity. Let's pick something and make that goal and pursue it. One last thing I do want to touch base on, and I love that you showed those pictures of the scoreboard, and it's such a cool visual effect that is. Every time you come up the mountain to see that and to be able to brand in there of what you're doing, it really goes back to one of the biggest business principles I learned several years ago, and I learned it from the book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, is the importance of keeping a compelling scoreboard. We play differently when we have some element of a scoreboard in front of us. And this has been one of my challenges when I coach agents and coach business people, that they say they want to achieve certain things, but then they don't want to track the activities to create the result. And it just changes the way you play the game. And I love the way you articulated is you were able to brand that in, like that became a mini reward along the way. You didn't get the red hat when you branded it, but it was a mini reward along the way to earn that red hat along, at the end of the event. Yeah. Any comments around that and the importance of operating off the scoreboard in life?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm kind of a big picture guy typically. Back to that race mentality, it's like the start now and the clock went off, and then I'm projecting the whole time when I'm going to finish. So that's and although it's good to have a big picture vision, the big picture vision, especially when the goal is ostentatious in life and in business, can also be overwhelming. Again, especially those red type A personalities. And if you're not breaking that down into manageable action items, And you're also not getting a little bit of a reward, as you put it, along the way. You can really experience burnout. And I'd say the first 15 years of my career was dominated by a decent amount of burnout. I'd be like, all right, it's the selling season, time to go. Gonna work a ton. And although you can still go through those motions, I think if you break it down and make the smaller achievements attainable, and there's some breaks, there's some rewards along the way, you're going to enjoy the journey as opposed to just tackling the destination. I tell new agents this all the time. You can bulldoze your way through this business if you're motivated enough for a couple years. I've seen some people do it for maybe 5 to 10. But if that's the approach and it's constantly just amount of units closed and GCI, and I got to do better next year, or be first in my office or first in the company or whatever, you're going to get burnt, and you're going to start doing what Marcus and I have done. And you're going to start questioning other aspects of your life and what it's all about and how to be more fulfilled in other areas. That's really, if you're a listener and you're just starting, you're in your 20s, I know that's hard to hear because I was there. Yep. And it's like, yeah, you guys can say that because, you know, you've checked these other boxes now. So it's easy to say you're focusing on other things. But I can give you sage, wise advice. If you can find a way to balance that a little more early on, you're going to enjoy the journey a lot more. And in turn, that energy is going to transfer to your clients, your contacts, your sphere of influence, and you're going to enjoy it. And you're still going to do as much business, if not maybe more.
I think that is a key point with this. And I think you and I both agree with this, is by us counseling and any point anyone's at making the decision to live a more balanced life, you might feel like you're saying, well, for me to be more balanced and focus on some of these other things, I'm in essence giving up some business opportunity. I'm convinced that I even would have succeeded at a higher level in business had I learned some of these principles earlier in life. I wouldn't have had to give up some of that. I actually would have propelled that forward. As you were talking, a very clear moment came back to me in my late 20s when I was gung ho cranking. There were several years that I slept 3.5, 4 hours a night over and over and over again, just because I was so committed to growing to the next level. And what I didn't realize, but my wife called me out on it, is I was always say something along the lines of, as soon as I get this and this in place, it's smooth sailing. And then I get those things in place. And then it would be, when I just do this and this, this is going to be perfect. And she called me out. She's like, have you noticed that there's always, no matter what it is, your happiness is based on just getting that next thing in place? And it was like, hit me in that moment of like, at first I was kind of like, to be honest, I was a little frustrated. Just like, look around at the wonderful things that I've created for us. This is awesome. And you're calling me out on it. And I'm like, wait, she's right. I'm the one not celebrating the successes along the way. I'm the one basing my happiness and success off the next thing.
Marcus, we already know we're soul brothers, but my wife did the exact same thing to me. So we might have soul sisters in our wives too.
We might. So funny, but I guess it takes me longer than most people to learn the lesson.
Yeah, I mean, and that's analogous to business, which we've been talking in races, but you can even shift gears. And I did that exact same thing in family and child rearing. I remember with little kids, I kept going, well, as soon as they sleep through the night, as soon as I'm out of the diaper phase. Yeah. And to get a little personal with our listeners, I had 3 kids and then was strongly against a 4th kid for all the reasons a guy like me would say. I was out of diaper phase. It was getting easier to travel. My life was a lot easier. I didn't want to go back through all these things. There's no way I could get less sleep in my 40s and on and on and on. And it was the biggest disagreement in my 20-year marriage my wife and I have ever had. And it went on for 7 years. And then 2 years ago, in my 40s, I had a newborn. And all my assumptions were accurate. I went back to some less sleep and more stress and diapers. And of course, I love my child, but I'll get even deeper than that. I love all my kids the same, as a dad would say, but this fourth is the most enjoyable raising the child phase for me, because I've been able to be a lot more present. The age difference with my kids is he's just funny and enjoyable. He just turned 2 last week and starting to throw a few little fits. And when all my other younger kids did that, I remember kind of being really stressed and freaking out. And why are they crying? And let's resolve this. And now the whole family kind of just laughs when Chunny slowly falls on the ground and throws a little baby fit. And we can kind of enjoy it. And the only thing that changed is my perspective on life between my other 3 and then him a decade later. And so, you know, that analogy that you made, it applies to all different aspects of life. Enjoy the journey, man. I mean, isn't that what we're here for? We're all going to mess up. We're all going to have aha moments, but enjoying it along the way really makes for a more colorful life.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And by the way, the pictures you posted of his on celebrating his birthday, such a cute little guy.
Thanks, man.
So fun. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. This has been a really fun conversation. And just to wrap it up, just so the rest of our listeners know how crazy you are, you just finished this monster event, legs probably just barely healing, and here you are next weekend going to do a Spartan Beast.
Yeah, I'm the Spartan Beast, the founder. He does a year-end race. I can't remember what they call it, but if you've qualified nationally, or if you've been ranked nationally, a year-end race is kind of in his backyard. Yep. And apparently he does a few features that aren't in any other Spartan races. So yeah, I'm on a plane to Boston next Thursday, and awesome. My legs are smoked. And I went and helped out the young men's neighborhood event this Tuesday, and sprained or broke my finger and pulled my hammy because I was super sore from Everest. And of course, I'm fine on Everest, then I get hurt doing this.
Yeah,
now I've got to repair in 10 days and fly out.
We go out again. That's pretty
dang
awesome.
Crazy in you, man.
Yeah, I think you have a little extra dose of crazy than the rest of us, which is one of the reasons I like you. So good luck at that event. I wanted an invite on the next one, and just appreciate you sharing that story with us. One of the biggest things that stands out to me from our conversation today, beyond the mental challenge and digging deep and setting those goals and the scoreboard piece, is the community, right? If last Saturday you woke up on your own, no community, no event around you, and decided I'm going to go hike the equivalent of Everest, and you went and did that on your own, there's a very high likelihood that you would talk yourself out of the event, right? At some point you would stop. At some point you would quit without that group, without that community around you. And so I want to kind of wrap up with this conversation of this is my and Jake's vision of the whole enchilada, and where we're going is we all are capable of more. We all have a potential in us across multiple aspects of life, and we don't have to pull back on and be okay with mediocrity in any of those areas. We can thrive at a higher level, but a key to that, beyond what you can control within you, is creating what's without you, and that is the community around you. And that is our ultimate goal with the whole enchilada. Is it's not about the words we say on this podcast. It's not about the images we post on our social media. It is about creating a community of people that want to achieve at a higher level and tap into that inner strength that, frankly, the majority of us don't even know what we're capable of internally. And the goal is, with this group, we all become better daily in each aspect of our lives. And I know I'm getting better by being in a relationship with people like Jake, people like the interview I did the last couple of weeks with David Rutherford. People like that make me better. And so I want to applaud you guys for being part of this conversation with us. And I also want to make an invitation to you to go find that person in your world that wants to join you on this journey, and invite them along, introduce them to the whole enchilada, introduce them to our message, and let's get them involved, and let's grow together. Jake, any closing comments from you, my friend?
Nah, brother, you nailed it right there. I got nothing left to say.
Awesome, my friends. We look forward to connecting with you next time. And do not forget, go live life on your terms. Thanks so much.
Thanks.